World News from the BBC. The father of the youngest victim of the New Zealand mosque shootings has said he will never forgive the white supremacists who carried out the attack. Aden Ibrahim Derea, whose son Mukhad was 3 when he was killed, said the gunman would face true justice in the next life. He was speaking on the 3rd day of the sentencing hearing in Christchurch. Brendan Tarrant has admitted killing 51 worshippers. The former Bosnian Serb commander Ratko Mladic is due to address judges in The Hague later as part of an appeal against his conviction for genocide and crimes against humanity. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2017 for his role in the Balkans War. The prosecution is urging judges to convict Ratko Mladic on a further genocide charge. Campaigning is beginning in Tanzania ahead of a general election due at the end of October. President John Magufuli, who is seeking re-election, faces 14 challenges. In June, he controversially declared that coronavirus had been defeated in Tanzania through the power of prayer. And Soy has this report.
The ruling CCM party has dominated Tanzania's politics for decades. A united opposition during the last election gave the party the strongest challenge yet. But the crowded race this time could give the president greater advantage. When he took office, Mr. Magufuli was widely praised as a reformist. But that sentiment has changed over time as his government faces increasing accusations of repression.
State media in North Korea have shown the country's leader Kim Jong-un carrying out official duties following a recent report that he had delegated some work to his sister because of stress. Mr. Kim chaired a meeting of the Politburo assessing preparations to prevent the spread of coronavirus. BBC News.
Yeah, man, I say things that, man.
Hello, this is News Day.
Well, listen to everything, man.
Carney, who's going to be talking in just a moment
BBC,
about day 2 of the Republican
ABC,
also,
JBC,
who
TVJ.
has written a very interesting
everything we listen,
survey
man.
Into the
anything to do with the information
of Alexei Navalny. Of course, he appears to have been poisoned in Russia. He's a very well-known critic of Vladimir Putin. Is he really national enemy number 1? What kind of surveillance has he been under? Also, the Rio Carnival will be talking about that. The Battle of the Skies in the future. An algorithm versus an experienced fighter pilot. Find out who did best a little later on.
Yes, but let's start in the United States, where the First Lady, Melania Trump, has made a speech to the Republican National Convention. Mrs. Trump used her speech at the White House to make a plea for racial unity.
Like all of you, I have reflected on the racial unrest in our country. I like to call on the citizens of this country.
Well, Mr. Trump wife so nice, man. She talk nice as a Russian.
And look at things from all perspectives. I urge people to come together in a civil manner so we can work and live up to our standard American ideals.
Melanie.
I also ask people to stop the violence and looting being done in the name of justice, and never make assumptions based on the color or person's skin.
Well, the convention comes as protests over the shooting of a black man, Jacob Blake, in Wisconsin this week continue. A curfew is in force in the city of Kenosha for a 3rd night, and the governor has declared a state of emergency. Well, earlier I spoke to Matthew Redman, an African-American who worked on President Trump's election campaign in the states of Maryland and Virginia 4 years ago. I started by asking him if he believed the Republican Party has the right policies when it came to law and order.
The president has been committed to criminal justice reform. We've seen that with the First Step Act. We've seen that with the Criminal Justice Reform Summit that he held at the White House. But I'd like to be clear, you have to have law and order if you want a prosperous society. And the president's been clear about that. He wants a prosperous society for all Americans. And that includes the police officers who are minorities serving in the communities that have a high incidence of criminality. He's for all Americans, and in order to ensure a peaceable, prosperous nation, we need to to have law and order.
9 out of 10 African Americans support Joe Biden over President Trump. A lot of high-profile African Americans have directly called the president a racist. Do you believe that he has had a good handling of racism in the United States?
I will say that the conservatives, the Republicans, when it comes to messaging for minority communities, that includes blacks, Asians, Latinos, it hasn't been the best. And the left has been winning as it relates to messaging. But when you put the work that has gone into this administration in reaching out to minorities, listen, blacks, Latinos, Asians are in the military. They are in spheres of the judicial system. The president has just nominated and appointed the first chief of staff for the Air Force, and he's a black chief of staff. His record has proven itself that he's not a racist.
Can I just ask, were you pleased with the way in which President Trump responded to the death of George Floyd?
Yes. George Floyd, by no stretch of the imagination, should have happened. And the president's commitment to reforming the criminal justice system has happened well before the George Floyd incident. He's had listening town halls all across America. He's hosted a criminal justice reform summit at the White House. Everyone could agree that what happened in the George Floyd situation should not have happened. And we have to hold law enforcement officers accountable. I don't think there's any argument about that, specifically as it relates to qualified immunity. And the president has been clear on that.
The thoughts there of Matthew Redman, an African-American who worked on President Trump's election campaign 4 years ago.
So I like to wait for the change.
Now let's talk to Russia and a story that has taken us from Siberia to Germany. The Kremlin is dismissing accusations that President Vladimir Putin could have had anything to do with the poisoning of one of his main critics, Alexei Navalny. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the allegations were untrue, shouldn't be taken seriously. Mr. Navalny was apparently poisoned, it seems, in Siberia. Doctors in Germany, where he's now being treated, said that he has, quote, probably been poisoned. Mr. Peskov said that was rushing to an opinion. Now, it's interesting. There is a well-respected Russian independent media group, Project Media, which does, you can find them online. They do sort of in-depth investigations of Russian life and Russian situations and stories. And they have just published an investigation which paints a picture of the surveillance operation carried out by the security services against and around Mr. Navalny. Now, it's come out now. Roman Badalin, the editor of Project Media, joins us now. And just for a bit of background, Roman, you were working on this investigation already. You've just brought it out a little bit earlier because of these dramatic events surrounding Mr. Navalny. Is that right?
Yes, it's absolutely right. We started it about half a year ago, and well, our initial plan was to release it in September.
Urban change, like.
Reality has its own plans.
So give us an idea, Roman, of what it was that you found. I mean, the depth of control. First off, just give us an idea. How do they see him? Do they regard Mr. Navalny as an irritant, as a mosquito, or as something quite dangerous?
It's something or someone quite dangerous, yes, because he's the one opposition leader in Russia who still can gather people for mass actions in Moscow and St. Petersburg.
How about outside Moscow and St. Petersburg? It's interesting, he was in Siberia, where there has been some civil discontent and protests in the street, not related to him, but there he was in Siberia. That's not where he's most successful, usually, is it?
Yes, it's an interesting question. Normally, he is not so popular in provincial towns like he is in Moscow and other big cities. But you are completely right. We had a big rallies in Khabarovsk this summer, which were not related to Navalny at all. And this autumn we will have election day in many Siberian regions, and Navalny was active in these regions.
And do you think that combination was concerning the authorities?
My light.
Maybe. I would say maybe.
And give us an idea. I mean, your sources. You had sources. I understand you were speaking to people inside the security services. How strict, how close was the surveillance of Navalny and his operation?
I can start with a very vivid example from my point of view. It was last Friday. At that moment, Navalny was in hospital in Omsk. And just at the same moment, we have talked to
international news.
top official from the Kremlin, and that guy talking to us just shared
time now, you know, people hardly get by road.
It was the medical test, latest medical test.
Govern away, you know.
And those tests were made in Omsk just
urban
hours
change, like
before
urban change.
And that guy. Thus, that guy tried to convince us that
can't convict myself, you know. So I run my video. Them boy they would dig up my profile and say I run the light.
Surveillance was, and this surveillance is. So the most surprising thing was to find that Navalny was under surveillance 24 hours, 7 days a week. Every move, as I said, every purchase, every phone call, email, and so on.
And is this because they see him as sort of public enemy number one?
Yes.
Yes. Russia and Arab for poison half money.
So we had.
And what is your feeling about this illness, this poisoning that's attacked him? Because I know, no one can say for certain, but surely if they've got him under such strict control, they don't need to do something so obvious and so maybe foolish and dangerous as actually poisoning him.
Well, I can't think it's the same way like people in the Kremlin do, Maybe they have some other reason in mind to do so. But what I can say for sure, with such total level of surveillance, they should know how it happened. Either they were involved directly.
Or they know how it happened. That's really interesting. Roman?
Yes.
Many, many thanks indeed. Roman Badani, editor of Project Media. Go and have a look. It's one of the very few independent Russian investigative outlets that manages to work in what are pretty difficult circumstances for many journalists in Russia. Roman Badani, many, many thanks indeed.
Let's get the sports news now.
Yes, perhaps the greatest player of all time, Lionel Messi, has never been closer to leaving Barcelona at any point in his 20 years at the Spanish club. Representatives of the Argentinian attacker sent a certified fax to the Barca board last night outlining his intention to walk away from Camp Nou for free this summer. Ugly scenes outside Camp Nou last night. The fans are furious at the way that the club's being run. I'll be speaking to somebody who knows the club very well on Newsday in about 25 minutes or so. Meanwhile, Manchester United captain Harry Maguire has vowed to clear his name after a Greek court found him guilty of aggravated assault, resisting arrest and repeated attempts at bribery. He's been dropped from the England squad because of it. And finally, in the NBA playoffs, the Utah Jazz missed the chance to seal their place in the Western Conference semi-finals on Tuesday. They lost against the Denver Nuggets, who've cut Utah's series lead to 3-2, whilst the LA Clippers beat Dallas to go 3-2 up in their series. More sport from me shortly.
Thank you, James. Back in around 20 minutes.
Right, business with Andrew. Andrew, this is a fascinating story. The Ant Group, the Chinese financial company, they've announced an initial public offering of shares, and it's going to be huge. How much is huge?
Well, it could raise up to $30 billion, and that's for selling some of the shares. If they manage to achieve that, then it could mean that the whole company is valued at well over $200 billion. So this is quite clearly going to be the biggest stock market debut that we're going to see this year. I suspect probably most people haven't actually heard of Ant. As you say, it's a financial technology technology group. It's an online payments group, actually, or a mobile phone payments group. It's started by Jack Ma, who still controls it. Now, Jack Ma was the billionaire who came up with Alibaba, which is an online marketplace, the dominant online marketplace in China. And basically, this was set up as a way that Alibaba could basically take payments, but it's gone far beyond just buying things online from a marketplace similar to eBay or Amazon. People now use up to 700 million people a month. That's basically around about half of the population of China use at to do things like pay their bills, buy insurance, invest in stock market funds, and so on. So Alibaba still owns about 33% of ads, but it probably will raise a lot of money if this IPO goes ahead.
Listing, I believe, in Hong Kong and Shanghai as well, rather than anywhere else, such as London or New York. Andrew Wood, many thanks indeed. Andrew with the business news from Hong Kong.
Now, Brazil is the worst hit country after the United States for COVID-19.
Wow.
More than 110,000 people have died and over 3.6 million people have been infected. It is a country that has been struggling economically before the pandemic hit, and from the very beginning, President Jair Bolsonaro has pushed to restart the economy, arguing that the country cannot cope with a shutdown. It's led to critics accusing him of undervaluing the health of millions of Brazilians. So just how critical is the South American economy? Our South American correspondent Katie Watson now reports from Sao Paulo.
They call it the greatest spectacle on earth. For Brazil, Carnival is everything. Behind the scenes, though, are months of preparation. Brazilians often say the year doesn't really start until Carnival is over. But the pandemic